And welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites News. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And Dr. Lopkin, certainly things are interesting in the news, and the ongoing controversy and concern with the coronavirus.
Yeah, the coronavirus is looming big in the news right now. We've actually made some progress. Japanese scientists have isolated what the virus is. They're making that information available to all countries, so they should be able to speed up work on a vaccine for it. In the meanwhile, China is putting up hospitals at a record pace. They actually just put up a hospital in 9 days. The virus is still spreading. It has more cases have been found in the United States and are starting to be found in other countries. It has
one in Boston, actually, I believe, recently.
Yes, yeah. One in Boston, one in San Francisco.
Interesting. And also it's having a impact, I believe it's been reported on potential economic impact.
It has a huge economic impact because in order to isolate the virus, China has shut down many of its businesses. So factories are shut down, offices are shut down, manufacturing is shut down. So you're going to see a lot of supply chain issues. Companies that have a lot of operations in China are being affected. McDonald's and Starbucks have already announced they're closing down a lot of their locations to keep people safe. The market on Friday plummeted on coronavirus fears. However, it is rebounding now. Now that people are starting to think there will be fewer fatalities than originally expected, particularly outside of China. And the economy is still strong despite the coronavirus. So the markets are starting to bounce back.
Okay, well, we had the Super Bowl this Sunday. Interesting game, great game. Kansas City, the first time in 50 years. I believe the ratings were quite strong, and the ads, Super Bowl ads, didn't kind of got a little panned in terms of there was nothing that was really stuck out, which usually is the case. And then Dr. Lopkin, there was some controversy on the halftime show. Some people, not all, felt that it was a little too sexualized.
Yeah, there have been complaints about that with halftime shows before. It, tends to go back all the way to Janet Jackson with her wardrobe malfunction. Honestly,
yeah, this was a little risque, but I guess the other thing I'm thinking about is that. We live in that kind of a risque world. I don't think too much shocks people. I mean, what's available on the internet is readily available. So I know it's not 1975, so I don't think people were having heart palpitations over it.
All right. I mean, the days where the Super Bowl halftime show was up with people have long since passed.
No question. And there's political news, isn't there, Dr. Lopkin?
Loads of political news this week. Today is the Iowa caucuses. Iowa goes to see who they're going to support for the Democratic presidential candidate. Interestingly enough, Iowa has a very strong track record of choosing the Democratic candidate. Usually the person that wins the Iowa caucus for the Democratic Party does become the candidate. They're less successful choosing a Republican, and they don't necessarily have any bearing on who wins the presidential race, but they are very good at picking the Democratic candidate. Bernie has been surging in Iowa, given the Democratic National Committee some heart palpitations. But interestingly,
and also, wasn't there a poll that was missing too that they conveniently said there was technical difficulties?
There was a missing poll. The analysis went haywire apparently, and nobody knows what it said. Interestingly enough, less scientific polls, journalists just going out and talking, indicate Bernie and Biden may not have the support that the polls seem to indicate. Most of what Iowa residents are saying is, yes, they are supporting, one of those two, but their support is far from absolute. And by the time today is over, they may very well switch. So this is going to be up in the air right up until the end.
Very interesting. Yes. So we will see what happens. I know that there is obviously in the news that the Democratic, in terms of traditional Democratic base is concerned about Bernie, and also I believe I know this week. If you can comment on this, Dr. Lopkin, the impeachment will be voted on Wednesday, correct?
Yes, the impeachment is scheduled to come to an end. Last Friday, further witnesses were voted down. This week on Wednesday, they will vote whether or not to remove Donald Trump from office. It's widely expected that he will not be removed from office, and this will bring the actual impeachment process to an end. Although, as far as I can tell, the Democrats are going to try to use this as a campaign issue and claim that because there were no witnesses called, he was not really exonerated.
Yes. Usually we make it a habit not really to comment on or editorialize on the news, but just up or down, do you think it was a net positive or not a net negative for the Democrats?
From what we've seen, it's actually been a net negative for the Democrats. The Republican National Committee came out on Friday announcing that the impeachment brought them record donations.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I guess the final news bit really is the State of the Union, sandwiched in between the impeachment and the Iowa caucuses. That should be interesting too.
It should be. There's questions about whether or not Trump will even mention the impeachment. Most experts recommend that he doesn't. He is only the second president ever to give a State of the Union during an impeachment, Bill Clinton being the first.
Interesting. Well, that concludes this edition of Carnivore News Bites. We'll do it again next Monday.
See you next week.
You've been listening to Carnivore Bites, part of the Exvadio podcast network. You can catch us every week on carnivoreradio.com, exvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcast Store, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you find podcasts.